Welcome to this episode of Out of Bounds. I'm John Luck with Mary Evers as we continue to work our way through this 3, 4, 5, I forget how many months we've gone without sports.
It's been 76 days.
Okay, so
I've been keeping track on my calendar.
All right, so it's felt like 79 days or 79 years, who knows? But there may be hope for 3 sports, and we're going to talk about that here today. As the NHL has voted on a 24-team playoff proposal. Gary Bettman talked about this 24 hours or so ago from when we're taping this. And so the way they're going to have this is the top 4 teams in each conference are going to play a round-robin style play here, and then the rest of the teams are going to go ahead and play a qualifying tournament. So
yeah,
overall, what's your take from this 24-team playoff proposal?
It's definitely not ideal, but at this point, we can't really start arguing about what exactly is ideal or not because anything is probably what we want the most right now. I'm glad that the top 4 teams, when they first announced that they were doing the top 4 teams in each conference were going to get we're going to have buys basically into the tournament. I was a little worried because it just didn't seem fair to me because obviously if these other teams have been playing for a week prior to play these other teams, it wouldn't necessarily be fair. So them doing a round robin thing is great. I'm not sure I'm thrilled about it having anything to do with the standings because I think that's kind of stupid. If they had just done like scrimmage games that had no meaning, I think I would have been happier. But can't get too nitpicky as it is now.
So the problem with it being, kind of an exhibition game for the Boston Bruins is instead of having your top line players, Marchand, Krejci, Bergeron, Chara, you'd have players like, Trent Frederick out there. You'd have the Providence Bruins out there. I kind of like this idea, and you're going to hear this a lot with the sports we're talking about. This is kind of the best of the worst scenarios or the worst choices that these leagues have, because originally there was talk about all 31 teams taking part in the postseason tournament. Yeah. So I think you can't have 16 because you weren't going to get the players and the owners to vote for that. Mm-hmm. You weren't going to have 31 because that would have been an absolute nightmare for 2 hub cities. So with 24 teams, you're kind of finding that middle road. Right. And if you don't want to go ahead and start this next season, whenever that starts, probably end of January, beginning of February, you have to kind of get things going here. They already canceled the rest of the regular season. Mm-hmm. So the Boston Bruins are President's Trophy winners. Congratulations on that.
It always works out so well when they win the President's Trophy.
Oh, we're going to get to that. I did some research that you're going to love as a Bruins fan.
I can't.
So this is phase 2 of the NHL's return to play plan. And it says that no more than 6 players are allowed at one time to engage in voluntary training activities. Clubs have to follow state mandates on opening facilities. So right now the Bruins can't open the Laurier Ice Arena because obviously Massachusetts is still in phase 1, 1A, right. 1B, whatever it is. Yeah. Players that return to their team cities, they have to quarantine for 14 days. Mm-hmm. And this is where I think it gets kind of interesting from a player standpoint. The testing of asymptomatic players may be done if there are enough tests for first responders and symptomatic people. So realistically, for the Bruins, it's kind of interesting or jarring that not all the players can get tested. And I think that was a sticking point for the NHL and just players.
Yeah, I mean, luckily for the Bruins, I think for the most part, most of them are in town. Don't even think a lot of the international players really went home from what I understand. So hopefully that will end up being a positive for them. The testing stuff is going to be an issue. Obviously when this all first started happening and NBA players started getting testing, there was a lot of uproars. Why are we wasting tests on NBA players when it could be used for people who are actually sick? But now it seems like it's the opposite. We don't have enough tests for players to ensure the greater good of the population, but it's still worrying. So I think the problem with all of this is if they don't have enough tests for all of us, as no matter who you are, from all athletes, all people, no matter what you do, is it really a good idea to come back at all? Because as soon as one person has it, I mean, hockey, you're wearing gloves, you're wearing face shields, you're wearing a lot of protective gear, but there's a lot of sweat and a lot of the times hockey players will put their mouths on their gloves to take them off when they're not on the ice. So that's concerning. So if they don't have enough tests for all the players, I don't see how they can reasonably start back up.
Yeah, if you can't touch another player, Brad Marchand's screwed. He can't lick a player
No,
or
there
bite a
will be
player.
no face looking this year. No, that's for sure.
That's why people watch the playoffs. Come on. So let's
Sure.
talk about this format. We talked about it a little earlier. There's going to be 2 hub cities, one for the Eastern Conference playoffs, one for the Western Conference playoffs.
Yep.
We talked about the top 4 seeds essentially getting a bye into the Stanley Cup playoffs, playing a round-robin tournament to determine the seeding.
Right.
The first 2 rounds will be either a best of 5 or a best of 7. And we'll get back to the traditional play for the conference and Stanley Cup final.
Yep.
That will be a best of 7. And I had a feeling when I heard 2014 playoff or 2014 tournament, I could hear all the Bruins fans already going, oh, the Bruins are going to get hosed. The Bruins are going to get screwed. Why are they doing this to the Bruins? Are the Bruins getting hosed in this situation?
I don't see how – I don't think so. Because I think that the playing field is pretty equal for all of the teams in the league right now. They've all been off for months at this point. Most of them haven't been able to really work out outside of what they can do in their own homes. So I don't see it being, the Bruins are getting screwed, because if the Bruins are getting screwed, so are the Blues, and so are the Tampa Bay Lightning, and so are the
Penguins.
Dallas Stars and Vegas. And so all those teams, it sucks. They're not going to be able to – they're going to have a round-robin thing and not real playoff or whatever you want to call it. But at this point, they just have to realize every team is on – it's obviously the points matter still going into the playoffs. But from a physicality standpoint and the game standpoint, everyone's starting off like it's game 1 of the season again. So I wouldn't say that the Bruins are being screwed any more than any other team in the league.
All right, so all you sports radio listeners, just cool it with the whole Bruins are getting host topic here. And I don't think they need any help with choking a number 1 seed or the best team in the playoffs away here, because I did some research.
Okay, let's hear it.
And so these are the years that the Bruins are the best team in the NHL, so they win the President's Trophy.
Okay.
2013, 2014, they lost to Montreal in the second round. Go all the way back to 1989, 1990, they made the Stanley Cup final, but lost to the Edmonton Oilers.
Yep.
82, 83, they lost to the Islanders in the conference finals. 73, 74, they lost another Stanley Cup final. So the last time the Bruins won the Stanley Cup as the best team in the NHL, 1971, 72.
A long time ago.
Almost 40 years ago.
Yep.
So the Bruins don't need any help choking away a awesome position. We remember the 3-0 series lead, the 3-0 lead in Game 7.
Yep.
The President's Trophy.
I remember.
So are the Bruins primed for an upset? Because there are some factors that I was thinking about, and it could come into play here. And to talk about these players that are older and the players that contractually are done after this season. So if you are a player like Patrice Bergeron, a David Krejci, a Dale Chara, who are all north of 30, are you concerned about them? And then you have the free agents, which we'll talk about in a little bit.
Well, I mean, so obviously those guys that you just mentioned were on that 2013, 2014 team that did lose, even though they were the number 1 team in the league. And I mean, but it's not really just the Bruins that don't always fare well with the President's Trophy. I mean, look at what happened with the Lightning last year. I don't think that they're in any worse position as the Bruins are, because they clearly choked the playoffs away last year. I think they got swept in the first round, if I remember correctly. Yep. And so I've never put any stock into, but this is the best team in the league, because hockey's one of those sports that the regular season doesn't really matter once the playoff starts. If you're in the playoffs, you have, I feel, as good of a chance as any to win the Stanley Cup. Obviously, the older guys coming back from this random break in the regular season, it's going to be tough, especially Chara is kind of one of the people that I'm most worried about. He's obviously north of 40. Who knows how well that TB12 diet's been going while he's in quarantine. Hopefully he's not golfing, because it doesn't really work well with golf, as we found out last weekend. But Bergeron and Marchand and Krejci, I'm not super worried about those guys, because, I mean, if you think about it, they went to Game 7 in the Stanley Cup last year. Obviously they lost. Okay. So they had a shortened offseason, and they came back on fire at the beginning of this season. They had some low periods in December going into January, but for the most part, they've had a pretty solid season. The real big question mark for this team is going to be Tuukka Rask. He had a fantastic playoffs last year. Obviously, you're going to argue that they lost Game 7, but I still don't think that that's Tuukka Rask's fault when the only person to score was their third-line defenseman who had just come back from a concussion 5 seconds before.
If I'm going to make fun of Tuukka Rask for blowing a big situation, it's going to be Game 82 when he went to the bar and got buffalo chicken and had other problems the day after. That's the only time I'm going to get on Tuukka Rask.
Yeah, I think that Tuukka might be the biggest worry going into this. And because of that, I think Bruce Cassidy's going to have to let go of the Tuukka's going to play every single game of the postseason. He's going to have to let Halak start a couple of games. And I'm not too worried about that because Halak has been having a fantastic season as well. Both Rask and Halak are in the top 10 of save percentage and game wins for the regular season of what happened. So when you have two goalies that are in the top 10 of the league for the most part, you don't feel as worried about it, but hopefully Bruce Cassidy will kind of step away from the Tuukka's our man because, yes, Tuukka's our man. That's fine. He's definitely our number one goalie. But it would be a shame to let Tuukka screw up and not give Halak a chance at all.
So in this round-robin tournament, the Bruins are going to have to play 3 games. Do you have Halak maybe start 2 of those games in net just to kind of give Tuukka that chance to get the practice reps while still getting 1 game of a round-robin tournament, if you will?
Yeah, I think that would probably go for the best because obviously Tuukka's going to practice with the team. And hopefully Pastrnak, who we haven't talked about yet, is still as hot as he was leaving the season because when the regular season ended, he ended with 49 goals. And I think that was kind of one of the things that I was super worried about because he never was able to hit that 50 goal mark. And when the commissioner said the other day that that's it, regular season's over, I felt bad for him, especially because it was actually his birthday that was announced. Fun fact. So I would just put Tuukka in net and just let Pastrnak just keep going because I think that's kind of your best shot of getting Tuukka back to the form he was in already. But I think you're right. I think Halak starting 2 games of the round robin is probably the best for everyone because like I said, even if somehow they lose to the Lightning or the Caps or the Penguins, I think it's Penguins is the 4th team in the
Penguins are 5.
Oh, Penguins are 5.
Yeah, I think it's Flyers, Blue Jackets, Lightning, Bruins, maybe.
I don't know. Anyways,
yeah.
It doesn't matter. Even if they lose to one of those teams, I'm not going to be super worried about it because, like I said, once the playoffs actually start, it's even playing field for them.
So I talked about the free agents that are coming up at the end of this season. Names to look out for: Jake DeBrusk, a restricted free agent at the conclusion of this year's playoffs. Torrey Krug, that could be a very interesting one. How does he handle the defenseman play? And also Matt Grzelcyk is a restricted free agent as well. So 3 names just to look at, maybe something to keep in the back of the mind if there's a loose puck in a random playoff game.
A lot of people, I think with Jake DeBrusk, that'll kind of be an easier contract to negotiate only because he's had a good season, but it hasn't been his best season. I don't know what the market's going to be for him, especially because with hockey, you don't see restricted free agents going anywhere. There's one instance this last offseason, and it had been the first time in a long time that a restricted free agent actually had someone try to buy out their contract. So obviously the same goes with Matt Grzelcyk being a restricted free agent. Torrey Krug is definitely the biggest what if because Torrey Krug is one of the better defenders in the league, and he's one of the best two-way defenders in the league because Torrey Krug will give you the goals when you need them. And because of that, his asking price is going to be a lot higher than the Bruins are probably going to be able to afford, especially because of the circumstances. What I would foresee happening, because I really don't think the Bruins are going to want to let Torrey Krug walk, I can see, and he's expressed interest in staying in Boston and even possibly making less money to stay in Boston. Now, how less, we don't really know. But considering the circumstances, considering the world is going to be kind of crazy going forward for the next couple of years because of all of this, especially the sports world, because everything's going to be delayed now. I wouldn't be surprised if Torrey Krug and the Bruins came up with like a 1-year small deal to revisit his free agency when everything's kind of more back to normal. So that's kind of where I foresee things going. Of course, I don't know. I've never worked on a sports contract before, so I'm not super into
Ever?
Nope, never ever. But I wouldn't be surprised if they kind of worked out, because Torrey Krug is not going to be the type of person that's going to be like, I don't care that you lost billions of dollars this year. I want all of my money. But to be fair, every team is losing that money. So no team is really going to be able to pay him what he was probably going to get if this had never happened.
If only there was another sport that wasn't trying to get every single penny and dollar. Well, we'll get to that in a little bit.
Yeah.
But let's talk about the NBA, as there are talks right now between the league and Walt Disney World about the NBA resuming and ending its season in the ESPN Wide World of Sports complex, making a bubble basically over the area. Now, it is worth noting that there are somewhere around 24,000 hotel rooms available on a campus that's about 40 square miles. So do we think the NBA is going to come back? The time frame is the middle of July, end of July.
Yeah. I think if any sport is going to come back, any sport that was canceled, I'm not talking football, but any sport that was going to come back, it's going to be the NBA. Obviously, quarantining is going to be a lot difficult, and keeping social distancing is going to be a lot more difficult than hockey or baseball would be. But in my opinion, it seems like, and honestly, this kind of shocked me a bit, the NBA players are way more willing to do business with the NBA than the other leagues are. I think at the beginning, there was a lot of issues. I'm not playing without fans. I'm not playing if I have to be away from my family, blah, blah, blah. That seems to have died down a lot. Obviously, we heard about their players-only Zoom call for a lot of the bigger names on all the teams. And they've all seemed to agree with the NBA and the Players Association that this is kind of the best way forward. So I do think that the NBA will come back. I'm hopefully mid-July is really their starting date. And obviously, I think if Disney's probably your best way to go. I think it's a way better option than Vegas is, because ESPN already has a sports complex there. And Disney's already decided, I think, that they're not going to open until after Labor Day anyways. So it's probably the best bet for not only sports, but also Disney World, because they're obviously going to get paid for this, and they wouldn't be getting any money anyways.
Well, it works out pretty well, because the NBA, let's not forget, they are primarily on ESPN and ABC, which are owned by, lo and behold, the Walt Disney Company.
Yep.
And Jared Dudley, I think it was, went on a podcast or something and said this isn't a bubble where you aren't allowed to leave. You are allowed to leave, but the players and the families have to be smart, because if you leave the bubble and you test positive, you're done. Yeah. And if you have a player that's at the end of the bench, let's use the Celtics, for example, Tremont Waters or Taco Fall, even. If they were to unfortunately test positive and they leave the bubble, they're not allowed to come back in. That's not big for the NBA. Yeah. If Giannis Antetokounmpo, Anthony Davis, LeBron James, James Harden test positive, that could be awful for the league.
Well, I think that those guys, especially the ones you just mentioned, they all actually, I don't know about Anthony Davis, but a lot of them have families. So they're not going to want to risk stuff anyways, especially if they have small children. I mean, Giannis has a newborn at his house. So they're not going to want to do anything stupid to jeopardize their families. And I think knowing that will help them not want to do anything to jeopardize what's going on in the season.
And I think that's where the hotel room count that I was talking about comes into play, because it is also worth noting that MLS is in talks with Disney about holding their soccer tournament at Wide World of Sports as well. So even still, with 20,000 rooms, this leads me to my other point, because there's talk about the league bringing all 30 teams back and finishing out the regular season, because there is some financial aspect with the regional television network money. I think it's a minimum of 70 games, and Damian Lillard already said, I'm not playing in a meaningless game if my teams aren't in.
Right.
So should all 30 teams come back, or should we do what the NHL is doing and go to a playoff, even if it is an expanded playoff?
I think that they would be better off going in the same direction as the NHL. Obviously, the money is going to really suck, but they'd be better off doing some games than none at all. And if they can't get the players to agree to do these nonsensical games, and I mean, they're already sacrificing a lot to do it in the first place. So I would honestly keep it down to the teams that are going to be in the playoffs. Whether or not they expand the playoffs, I'm not sure. But I think that they should probably just pick it up in the playoffs because they were almost done anyways. And I know it's, the logistics of the TV deals and stuff like that. But at this point, they need some revenue coming in to keep the sport afloat. And I think that's their best option of doing it.
So with the NHL, there were teams right on the cusp of making the wild card spot,
Yeah.
I think it is, in each conference. But in the NBA, when the season was paused on March 11th, the 8th and the 9th place teams in the East are separated by 5.5 games. In the West, that was by 3.5 games. And in both conferences, the 5 and 6 seeds are tied in the standings. So really, you already had your playoff teams in place.
Yeah.
They were already put in their slots. So it really doesn't make sense to have a game like New York Knicks and the Cleveland Cavaliers coming in and playing at the Disney World Resort.
Yeah, absolutely not.
So the Boston Celtics are projected right now to play the Philadelphia 76ers in the first round of the playoffs in some format. We'll get to that in a second. But could the Celtics maybe surprise some people in the postseason? This should be a good answer.
John, how did the Celtics do against the 76ers this season?
With people in the stands, they lost 2.
Right. Okay. The 76ers were not having a good time of it as the season came to a close. It seemed like there was some locker room drama, which was kind of ironic because everyone was thinking after last season that maybe Brooklyn would be the team that had the locker room drama with the former Celtic. But it was the 76ers, so maybe it was Al Horford. Who knows?
Well, for the Nets to have locker room drama, that would mean Kyrie would actually have to show up.
Right. Okay.
I mean, he is a wannabe NBA All-Star superstar, but whatever.
So there was a lot of issues with the 76ers team going into this. Just it seemed like they were falling apart a little bit like the Celtics did last year, to be honest. And obviously the Celtics made it to the second round of the playoffs last year, but the Celtics played the Pacers, I believe, in the first round last year, which wasn't exactly a hard matchup. I think, in all honesty, that the 76ers are going to have a tough time beating the Celtics if that's who they end up playing in the first round. I'm not saying it's going to be a sweep by any means, but I do think the Celtics have a edge talent-wise and team-wise going into these playoffs. Obviously, like hockey, they haven't played in months. Jason Tatum only just got a hoop in his house like 2 minutes ago or something. So we don't know what kind of shape these guys are going to be in when they come back. But I think that if that's the first round, that the Celtics are going to have the edge over the 76ers.
And then quickly, there was talk about the NBA possibly going from an East-West format, which has been done forever, to a 1-16 format with all 16 teams already being at Disney World Complex already. So either format, you'd still have the Celtics taking on the Sixers, but in the next round, if it were the East-West format, they would take on the Raptors, and if it's just 1-16, it would be the Clippers. So which format do you want to see?
I like the thought of them going kind of bracket style with no conferences like the NCAA does. That's kind of one of my favorite parts of college basketball is kind of you don't really know who you're going to end up playing. It's not just based on conferences. So I like that. However, I think that the Celtics are more likely to beat the Raptors than the Clippers. So if I was, for the Celtics' sake, I would say stick with the conferences. But for an entertainment value, which I'm more interested in, no offense, I would go tournament style instead.
So the Celtics are the 5 seed in this 1-16 format. The most upsets happens with what matchup? Oh, that's right, the 5 and 12 matchup. So that just makes me feel awesome. All right, so we talked about 2 sports that have their owners and the players getting on pretty well.
Yep.
Let's talk about Major League Baseball, as there have been some discussion between owners and the Players Association on trying to come up with a financial avenue to get players back on the field and try and get something going here. So let's talk about the overall split. We'll get to the comments that almost made me drive my head into a brick wall.
Yeah.
But the overall comments on the split between MLB owners and players and the Players Association that's gone back for years.
Yeah. We've heard it time and time again that the MLB Players Association seems to be the Players Association that's kind of more in the driver's seat than the owners compared to the other teams, to the other leagues, I should say. That has come to the detriment of baseball so many times. We all know that baseball is kind of a dying sport. It's boring, and the only people that watch it are people who are sitting on the couch in the middle of the day for the most part. I love baseball, don't get me wrong. And if there was one place on earth that I would like to be when this quarantine stuff lifts, it's Fenway Park. However, they have been very reluctant to change some old habits for years now. So when there started to be conflict about coming back and pay cuts and issues with rules and how many innings they're going to play, I was not surprised that they could not come to an understanding. And I would not be surprised if they don't end up playing this year at all, because both sides, the players and the owners, are too stubborn to actually come up with a compromise between the two of them.
Honestly, this group of players and this group of owners is going to be what kills baseball easily.
Yeah.
Because all they had to do was agree on something. I understand that the players are going to take one big pay cut. We'll get to that in a little bit.
Yeah.
But in a situation like this, it kind of goes back to financial planning. If the players were smart and, they took their $35 million a year contract and they take a cut of that, put it into a pool of players, it would kind of make it a little easier for players to come back for less money.
Yeah.
This is all about billionaires and millionaires, and it will continue to be that way.
Yeah.
Baseball should just go ahead and say, forget it. 2020 is canceled.
Yeah.
Work on the next CBA, because this is all about money. So if you want to go ahead and talk about shortening games, get the pitch clock in, maybe schedule double headers, do it now, okay? Yeah. I don't want to waste time in 2021 or when the CBA is over talking about whether a guy can walk around the mound, spit, scratch himself, snip himself, whatever it is. I don't want to hear about that when this game comes back. 2020 has been a god-awful year for sports and life in general. So go ahead, rip the Band-Aid off, have Rob Manfred go out there, say, season over, we'll see you in 2021. But from when that announcement is made to whenever something is fixed or accomplished, get it done now. Talk about it now. Whine about it now. Don't use the media. Don't use social media. No. Don't use your inside sources, Jeff Pass and Ken Rosenthal, whoever it is. Don't use them to have this turn into some 13-year-old schoolgirl, middle school conversation.
It's 100% become that. I mean, now they're using Twitch, which is a gaming streaming service, to complain about their contracts and whether or not they should take pay cuts for the season. It's absolutely absurd. They're little children. You're completely correct. It's like a middle school fight. And I agree. I think they should just cancel it now. As much as it pains me to say that, if they cancel it now, they can start on time next year and hopefully figure out all this crap before the sport in general goes down the gutter.
You know what I've realized? With baseball, without baseball, I've been able to survive. I've watched some old games. I've watched Bundesliga Ghostenspiel games. I think that's the German word for it, for no fans in the audience.
Yeah.
But you mentioned Twitch, and this is like dumping kerosene on a fire here. Blake Snell went on Twitch and had this to say on taking a reduction in salary. Let's see if I can do it in the Blake Snell tone here. Bro, I'm risking my life. What do you mean it should not be a thing? It should 100% be a thing, bro. If I'm going to play, I should be getting the money I signed to be getting paid. I should not be getting half of what I'm getting paid because the season's cut in half on top of a 33% cut of the half that's already there. So I'm really getting like 25%. Now, I mean, I understand I live in a state without a tax, but whatever. I didn't go to financial school or anything. Getting back to the quote he said here.
Oh, gosh.
Y'all got to understand, man, for me to take a pay cut is not happening because the risk is through the roof. It's a shorter season, less pay. I got to get my money. I'm not playing unless I get mine, okay? And that's just the way it is for me. Like, I'm sorry you guys think differently, but the risk is way the hell higher, and the amount of money I'm making is way lower. Why would I think about doing that? Like, I'm sorry, bro. So that's Blake Snell for you. And then he was backed up by Bryce Harper, who's making close to $40 million in 1 year.
So basically his line of thinking means that we should be paying doctors and nurses millions of dollars too, right? If you're going to risk your life, you should be making $35 million a year, apparently. That's his line of thinking, correct? I'm pretty sure it is.
Listen, I know unemployment is at like the Great Depression levels, but the thing that really makes it for me is whether or not some D-League ace pitcher for the Tampa Bay Rays is getting his money, because that's what matters to me. Now, I will say in all seriousness, the players are going to be taking a hefty pay cut.
Oh, yeah.
If this gets approved. So CBS Sports came up with just a few players from the New York Yankees to kind of put it into context. So Garrett Cole, the pitcher who the Yankees signed during this past offseason, he was scheduled to make $36 million this year, but obviously the season got cut in half for now. So his prorated salary has him making $18.22 million. Under this new proposal, he'd make $8.06 million, a reduction of close to 78%. Gary Sanchez is going to get a pay cut of about 67%. And I think where maybe this kind of makes me feel for the players is Kyle Higashioka, 25th player on the Yankees.
No idea.
He would have made just under $580,000 for the season. An 82-game prorated salary, about $295,000, and under this new proposal, he'd make $269,000. So for me, this kind of goes back to the point I was making earlier. Have these big salary players and all the players contribute to a pool to try and make something like this easier, because there's going to be either a second wave of this next winter, or hopefully not, but there's going to be something that stops play again, and it would be easier for players to go to the pool, take some money out of it, and you can hold your own, because right now the players financially, I think having these numbers come out and having Blake Snell come out, they're trying to create a rift between the players and the owners, and it's working.
Right. And I think so when it comes to the money aspect, it's easier for other leagues because no sport has as many players on their teams and their farm systems as baseball. And there's always going to be the guy that's making a whole lot less than one guy. And for those players, the ones that are at the bottom of the heap proverbially, I feel bad for. I really do, because I'm sure they're just trying to start their lives and their careers and prove to themselves that they're worth more than that. And I think the guys that are making it a lot more money are ruining it for them, because these guys, the guys that are making less money are now another year close to being cut completely, because there's another guy in the farm system that can do his job either the same or better. And because of that, so that's why when people like Blake Snell or Bryce Harper say these things, it's clear to me that they don't actually care about the other players on their team. And they don't care about, well, to be quite honest with you, it doesn't seem like they care much about the fans of the sport either, which is what pays them in the first place. With no fans, there is no sport. And they're alienating their fan base more so than they already have, because quite honestly, if you told me would I rather the MLB come back or the NHL and the NBA, I would stick with the NHL and the NBA, because it's more entertaining sports and their players seem to care a whole lot more than baseball players do. And so I'm more inclined to side with those guys than I would be the baseball players. And because of that, you would those sports, people are dying to see a hockey and a basketball game because it's been so long. It's not the same with baseball. Yeah, I'd love to watch a Red Sox game right now, but not as much as I like to see a Bruins or a Celtics game right now, because it's more entertaining. And I just think it matters more than baseball. And because of that, that's already the mindset of fans. When their big stars say things like that, they just completely put a wrench in everything.
To me right now, the MLB players have been vilified by their own doing and by, maybe what the owners are doing as well.
Yeah.
So financially, if this season doesn't happen, that's an absolute joke. Now, I will say the MLB has come up with a proposal for player safety on the field. That includes no high-fiving, no spitting, no sharing rides, no showers, etc.
Yeah.
Because there is a health aspect to this too. So if I'm a player like a Mike Trout that's going to have a child be born, in the next month or two, I understand if he doesn't want to do something like that. But if this is all about finances, then I have a problem.
But they're making it all about finances because, like you said, they have a real plan. But obviously, there are going to be people that have young children or have maybe elderly parents living with them or have underlying health diseases themselves, like anyone who has asthma or any other kind of disease like that. They're more susceptible to this virus. And I would 100% understand if they were like, you know what? Like, I don't want to risk my own life because of this. But if you come out and say, oh, well, if I'm not making my $35 million a year, I'm not playing, you make yourself sound like a villain.
There's players or people to look out for it if we get back here. Terry Francona, who's had underlying health problems, and the players. Trey Mancini, he's undergoing cancer treatment, I believe. John Lester, we know his dealings with cancer as well. So, I mean, there are some real life aspects to this. We keep talking about Blake Snell and Bryce Harper, but the players like John Lester, Trey Mancini, Terry Francona as a manager, those are the people that I think need to have the most attention paid to.
Yeah, I completely agree.
So I just want to go off script here for a second because there's been a lot of talk about an asterisk. If MLB comes back and you have a champion there, the NBA, the NHL, everyone has been saying, well, there could be an asterisk if you start playing with how the game is supposed to be played, if you add teams to the tournament and all that. So will there be asterisks for teams that win championships this year?
I get where people who are saying that are coming from because it's obviously a lot of the regular season was cut out. The playoff format is not the same as it usually is. So the season is just like fundamentally different. But these players are still going to work their butts off to win these championships. And I think there might be more drive to do so now more than ever because of how much time they've had off. And I'm sure we've missed watching sports, but I can't even imagine how much they've missed playing sports. So I don't think it'd be fair to say that anyone who won the NBA championship or the Stanley Cup has an asterisk next to it because it's not the team's fault. It's not the players' fault. It's not even the league's fault. It's just the circumstances of the world. So I don't think that would be fair. Now, if you bang on trash cans to win your championship, then I'd put an asterisk there.
What team would ever do something like that?
No idea.
So for the NBA, if you go to this 1-16 format, this postseason, I would think about putting it on there just because, the results have differed from how it would have in years past if we had the East-West format. And that would just be a small asterisk. But
right.
NHL, the Stanley Cup playoff is among the toughest tournament in sports to play, hands down. Major League Baseball, you have 9 innings. A guy gets up, spits on home plate, gets thrown out by the umpire. There's nothing that changes there. So I don't think there's much of an asterisk maybe on the NBA if you go to that 1-16 format we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
And finally, I think I know the answer to this one, but will the 4 months off from major sports affect viewership positively or negatively?
I think it'll be positively at first because I feel like everyone's just going to watch anything that they can. I mean, you saw it. How many people watched that Tom Brady, Peyton Manning golf tournament this Sunday? It was a lot. There was a lot of people. I watched it. I didn't understand anything that was going on. But one, Peyton Manning's hilarious. And two, it was a sport. So I watched it. However, I don't think it'll maintain that long. I think they'll see a significant drop off a couple of weeks in, and then pick back up when the championships actually happen. And I say that because if this time has given us anything, it's a chance to kind of reflect on things that are more important in life. And I'm sure people, when things start to calm down, are going to want to spend more time seeing family and friends that they haven't seen in months, more than sitting at home watching a basketball or hockey game. So I think, at the beginning, there's going to be a huge surge of ratings, but especially if the weather's nice and restaurants open back up and we can finally get haircuts, it might not last for too long.
I mean, it's been about 3 months or so without a haircut.
I do
So
need a haircut.
yeah, I think like you said, once you get through the playoffs, that's when it starts to get interesting. Will people watch the NFL if there's no people in the stands? Will they watch MLB when that comes back with no fans? I think that's going to be a true test, because if you have a playoffs series or whatever, people are going to watch that, especially at Game 7. It
Yeah.
doesn't really matter if you're a sports fan or not. You're still going to watch that. So I don't think it's going to be as high of an increase as many people think, but I don't think we're going to be talking about negative viewership for most of these sports.
Yeah, and I think when it comes to like will you watch it if there are no fans? How many times have we seen the Baltimore Orioles play with no fans? We've still watched it. So I don't think baseball, the crowds are
The
going to
Tampa Bay
matter.
Rays are practicing social distancing.
I don't think that crowds are going to matter if baseball comes back. And I also don't really care about crowds in football either, to be honest with you. It's going to be different with basketball and hockey. And because the crowds are so close, and especially in basketball, LeBron James can fall on top of you at any moment if you're in the front row of a Lakers game. So I think it's going to be weird watching basketball and hockey without fans, but I'm still going to watch it. But baseball and football, I'm not too worried about that aspect of it.
Let's be honest. If we have to cut back on fans, only one facility will work out perfectly, and that is a TD garden, especially in the balcony. Okay, it's going to work out awesome if you have to do social distancing. All right, so that'll do it for this episode of Out of Bounds. For Mary Evers, I'm John Luck. Thanks for watching.